Question number 5, Metiria Turei.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker, tēnā koutou e te whare, ko taku pātai ki te pirimia ka pātai, ka tū a ia I runga I te mana o ana kōrero katoa.
Speaker.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, yes, especially this comment. This is a government that's been very focused on the most at-risk kids. We want to do better for them.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Metiria Turei.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. When the Prime Minister said that his government is, quote, absolutely happy to commit to doing the best that we can to reduce the number of children that are in poverty or are struggling, end quote, why does his best exclude a child poverty reduction target?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, because the official advice is that there are a great many ways of measuring children that may or may not be in poverty. And one of the problems with having an individual target is you would then spend your time, I think, A, potentially stigmatising a lot of kids, B, not giving the money to areas that you actually need, like rheumatic fever, and thirdly, disagreeing with it. The member's definition of homeless people is 41,000 people, including people living on couches. The member's definition of poor children is 360,000. The government's is 60,000. There you go. We don't agree.
Order. Order. Supplementary question, Metiria Turei.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Does the Prime Minister agree with the Ministry of Social Development's technical measure that there are 230,000 New Zealand children living in households with incomes at 60% of the after housing costs anchored line?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I'm sure if the member is doing justice to the report and reading it out correctly, that will be correct. That will be the report commissioned by Brian Perry, which is the most definitive guide to measuring hardship in New Zealand. And I quote when the report says there is no evidence of increased poverty. Rates of material hardship in children have fallen in recent years.
Supplementary question, Metiria Turei.
Does the Prime Minister accept the Ministry of Social Development's official advice that there are 85,000 New Zealand children living in severe material hardship?
Speaker,
the Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, yes, and that's why the government has been saying for some time, when the member's been going out there inflating the number of children in extreme poverty, that the government's definition is between, or best calculation is between 60 and 100,000. At that point, we were saying that we didn't have Brian Perry's most recent report, but the indications were it would be around the midpoint, and indeed it proved to be that.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Metiria Turei.
Can the Prime Minister tell the House what is wrong with these internationally accepted official measures used by MSD and why they are not an appropriate measure of child poverty against which he can set targets for reduction?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, there's absolutely nothing wrong with them, and that's what the government does. It uses exactly that data and then it sets individual targets for things like immunisation, for areas like participation in early childhood education. It looks at income issues for families most at risk. That is the whole point. The government goes out there, and this government has done more than any other government to do exactly that in terms of insulating homes, in terms of maintaining working for families in extendia, making sure there are free doctors' visits, that is, in putting significant resources into rheumatic fever. That is the point. The government uses the data and then assesses individual targets.
Supplementary question, Metiria Turei.
If the Prime Minister accepts these official measures and he has set targets in 32, at least 32, other policy areas, why will he not establish these measures as official measures and set child poverty reduction targets as a result?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, the government has chosen to set individual targets on an individualised and component parts of what might be defined as poverty. We think that is a better and more effective way of making sure we're delivering for these kids. And these kids are the top priority of the government. That's why we've been putting so much money into areas like rheumatic fever and insulating 300,000 homes, making sure that the top priority for those homes now are in fact actually those that are occupied by the least well-off New Zealanders. The member is saying that there is one definition of poverty. There isn't, and the moment that you do that, the member will then come back and say she's effectively stigmatising a whole bunch of kids.
Order.
Supplementary.
Order. Supplementary question, Metiria Turei.
At the very least, will the Prime Minister commit to reducing the number of children living in severe deprivation, a measure that he has publicly accepted as accurate, by at least 10% by the end of next year?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, I'm going to set a particular reduction target, but what I will do is continue to do what the government has been doing, which is focusing absolutely on those children. And that's one of the reasons why the government has been saying these children that are in that group is between 60 and 100,000. It's why we're the first government in 43 years to raise benefits. But, Mr Speaker, I will raise one issue for the House.
Order.
Sir,
Order. I haven't called the member.
So the Prime Minister has answered the question quite fully. If he has other issues to raise, I suggest he does that in other questions.
Order. And that's not a point of order. I think it's a valid point, but it's not a point of order. It's for me to decide when an answer will come to a conclusion. Is it a point of order?
No, I want to carry on my answer.
No. I actually, on this point, order. The Prime Minister was in. No, on this occasion, while it's not a point of order, I said I actually accepted it was a reasonable point. The answer was given very clearly at the start of the answer, and I was about to rise to my feet to bring the Prime Minister to a conclusion. I don't have to anymore. Question number 6.